Hi, everyone. My name is Caitlin Yeager, Director of Heritage Programs for Missouri Humanities. We are a member-supported organization, and our mission is to enrich lives and strengthen communities by connecting Missourians with the people, places, and ideas that shape our society. Thank you so much for joining us for our final chapter of this 10-part virtual storytelling journey that brings the book Growing Up with the River, 9 Generations on the Missouri to life. Growing Up with the River by Dan and Connie Burkhardt explores our state's rich cultural heritage through the eyes of 9 generations of children growing up in river towns along the Missouri River. Today, we will look into the future, the Missouri River Valley in 2040. By this time the chapter is written, the bur oak acorn planted in the spring of 2017 will have seen 24 growing seasons. So will the children who planted it. Explorers, fur traders, immigrants, steamboats, railroads, farmers, and fun seekers have left an imprint on the Missouri River Valley. More changes will leave their mark by 2040. Today's chapter will be presented by Nartana Premachandra, a writer, storyteller, classical Indian dancer, and president of Dances of India, one of the United States' oldest classical Indian dance companies, now in its 43rd season. She recently gave a talk on river cities for the Missouri Historical Society, focusing on the Ganges, Mississippi, and the Seine. She loves the flow of stories, rivers, and dreams. After Nartana's narration, we will introduce our special guests. Stay tuned until the end for a special message from the Burkhardts themselves. Please let us know you're watching by asking questions and leaving comments. And in partnership with the Higher Education Channel, HECTV, St. Louis Storytelling Festival, Missouri History Museum, and Magnificent Missouri, we present Growing Up with the River.
Hi there. Thank you, Caitlin, for that lovely introduction. And I'm delighted to be here today to read you a chapter from this book. And I must admit, I've only read the last chapter. I was just told about this recently, and I want to read the whole thing because it's a fascinating story about the Missouri River Valley. So this is the final chapter. We don't know what the tree, the children, or our river valley will experience in the future. Without question, though, there will be even greater demand for the crops raised on our farmland and for drinking water from our river. We will still want to witness the spectacle of migrating birds, butterflies, and woodland creatures in their natural habitats. We don't know what wind and ice storms will have tested the branches of the growing bur oak, or what floods may have covered its roots. We don't know what a 2040 ride on the Katy Trail will reveal about the changes in the bluffs, wetlands, and fields along the trail. Will the land in the floodplain and on the bluff tops still be growing crops and trees, or will it be sprouting shopping centers and houses? Will the white pelicans continue to find the habitat they need at the confluence as they make their annual journey south? Will the monarchs find their fields of milkweed? Will the bluebird become the next Carolina parakeet or passenger pigeon? Or will it continue to find places to raise its young in the houses we provide? As we look back on the events and resulting impact on the river valley during the last 210 years since the bur oak was planted in Chapter 1, we see that the progress of one generation can be the problem of another. But we have an advantage. We can also see which decisions led to good results and which created disasters. We've had many examples of both good and bad decisions about our river valley in the last 2 centuries. When our book began in 1806 in La Charrette, only a few thousand people lived where millions live today. La Charrette was located about 50 miles from the Gateway Arch, and the best way to get there in 1806 was, as Lewis and Clark did, by boat on the Missouri, a perilous trip of several days. After Lewis and Clark passed by La Charrette and completed their exploration of the Louisiana Purchase, other explorers and new settlers soon followed. Railroads and towns were built. Farmers cleared land and planted crops. Eventually, much of the natural landscape changed from forests and prairies to farms and small towns, and then to housing developments and shopping areas. During this time, many people thought about accommodating the needs of the families who decided to live in the Missouri River Valley. People needed houses, places to work, and stores and businesses. They needed roads and eventually telephone and electric lines, airports and shopping malls, and all of the things that weren't here when the land was wilderness in 1806. A lot of people devoted their ingenuity and resources to making sure these needs for a growing area were met. But while many people thought about building houses, stores, businesses, and roads, a few individuals were thinking about something else. They were thinking about saving some of what was here originally, cherishing what brought people to live here in the first place, the forests and hills, the river bluffs and creeks, the fish and birds and other creatures that would otherwise have vanished with the push for development. While this book is about our countryside, it's interesting to think about what used to be rural and what individuals did long ago to save the countryside for generations they would never know. Several exceptional examples of land conservation are very close to us here in St. Louis. As we enjoy them today, we don't often think of them in those terms, but they are among the best in the nation. Henry Shaw was a successful businessman in the early years of St. Louis, selling hardware, knives, and other items that went west by steamboat to help settle the frontier. He became wealthy and traveled to Europe, where he saw great botanical gardens and was determined that St. Louis has something similar for all residents of St. Louis to share. That idea became the Missouri Botanical Garden. When the garden opened in 1859, it was on the edge of the wilderness, a long horseback ride from St. Louis. As Shaw wrote at the time, it was uncultivated, without trees or fences, but covered with tall, luxuriant grass. What is today the Missouri Botanical Garden in the middle of St. Louis was some of Missouri's original prairie. Forest Park opened on a Saturday in June 1876. At that time, it was surrounded by farmland in all directions, with only a few scattered houses, and was about 40 minutes from the St. Louis riverfront by horse-drawn carriage on a dirt road. Surely, many people wondered about the need for a park so far out in the middle of the country. With so much land available, why create a park of 1,370 acres? Most of the landscape already looked like a park, and land was plentiful. Why was it worth protecting? Forest Park, the Missouri Botanical Garden, and other public areas like Greensfelder, Queenie and Faust County Parks, and Babbler State Park were created decades ago by people who were thinking not only about what we need to build, but also what we needed to conserve. These treasures, excuse me, I thought I skipped a page. I'm sorry. These treasures are examples of people who were thinking about the future, about us, long ago. As we look ahead to 2040, let's appreciate how they created natural places for others to enjoy forever. Many places in our book, Shaw Nature Reserve, the Bush Conservation Area, the Boone Home, the Katy Trail, and Confluence Point State Park, are timeless examples of their vision. How fortunate we are that for generations, people like Henry Shaw, the Bush family, Ted and Pat Jones, and St. Louis civic leaders have worked to create gifts for the future, places available for us to experience nature and the outdoors. Not all of us are able to create a state park or special public area, but all of us have a chance to do something to show our appreciation and respect for our natural resources. We can visit the places on the map on pages 114 and 115 and experience them for ourselves. Missourians who are fortunate enough to own rural property can take steps to permanently protect it as a haven for wildlife, or as a peaceful place with natural beauty through what is known as a conservation agreement. Conservation agreements do not allow public access to land like a park, but they ensure that it will always be in agricultural, forest, or recreational use instead of a shopping mall, housing development, or golf course. Conservation agreements create scenic vistas for all of us to enjoy and protect land for farming and wildlife habitat. You can learn more about organizations that create conservation agreements for private landowners and work in other ways to conserve the Missouri River Valley by visiting their websites. The fate of the Missouri River Valley in 2040 is up to us. It can be built up and developed to look like our suburban landscape, or it can be conserved and protected for farming, wildlife, and recreation. Missouri River country can be a respite from urban life, close to our neighborhoods and shopping areas. It's up to us to determine the future of St. Louis's backyard. The future starts today and starts with you. Here are some suggestions for activities to learn more about the history and scenic beauty at home and around the state. So on the next page are listed resources where you can learn more about the Missouri River Valley, how to enjoy it, and how to protect it. And a couple of them really stood out to me. And one of them was, I'm just going to read this one to you. See the Missouri countryside on the Katy Trail. The Piers store just west of Marthasville reminds us that Katy was a railroad first. The town of Piers got its start as a railroad stop in the 1890s. And there's a painting there that shows you what the Piers store is like. And so I immediately went to the website, and I have to say it looks phenomenal, and I'm already planning on going there. I didn't even know about it. So that is a definite place to visit. There are also resources here where you can learn more about the river, as like riverrelief.org. And if you're interested in butterflies, monarch butterflies and bees, I love the monarchs. And I've seen a few in the last few weeks, and they're just magical. And so I think it's amazing to try to plant gardens to try to attract them as much as we can, because they're in danger. Biodiversity, STL.org, and that's DIVERSECITY, STL.org. And there are more resources in the book. And I just wanted to close with a little story to tell you. It's a true story. So while reading this chapter, I just thought a lot about our connection with the land and with outdoors. And I like in this chapter what Dan Burkhardt says, that you don't have to, I found it here, when he's talking about land conservation. Not all of us are able to create a state park or special public area, but all of us have a chance to do something to show our appreciation and respect for our natural resources. So that got me thinking that, even if we would love to go to a big park, a huge park, and we can't do that, well, we have nature right here in our backyard, and it's so important just to enjoy that and to treasure that. Even if all you have a tree is all you have is a tree in a parking lot. Whenever I'm at work, I should say, I'm usually the only one who takes my breaks outside, and seeing even the trees on the parking lot gives me joy. And so that connection with the natural world is what's so important. The story I wanted to tell you really quickly is my family is Hindu, and I took care of my grandmother for a long, long time. I was very close to her, and she passed away in 2014. And so after someone passes away in Hinduism, on the 13th day, we invite people over, because it's considered that the soul goes to heaven on the 13th day. So we invited people over. This was in July. It was beautiful outside. So I was cleaning up. And I saw this beautiful owl on a catalpa tree in the backyard. And it was just kind of staring at the house, and it was just amazing. I watched it, and I kept cleaning up, and it was there for like an hour. And then what was most extraordinary, to make a long story short, it came back every day for 4 weeks. And it was one of the most extraordinary experiences in my life, because I have lived in the same house in which I was born, and I've never seen owls like that. I mean, that was the only instance where it happened. And so that was my story. You know, I thought to myself, I was very sad if I was very sad after my loss, and I was, I don't know, inside and just on the computer all the time or TV, I would have missed all that and missed that amazing experience. So that's why I thought I'd tell my story, just to emphasize that connection to the land, and that's what helps us conserve public areas. So thank you. And I think, oh, thank you.
Thank you so much, Nartana, for your narration and telling of a very important chapter of this book, and for your personal story. That was so touching and such a cool way to end this series and this book. So we have a couple special guests today that are going to talk a bit about the work that they're doing. Our first special guest for today is Lesley Hoffarth, and she served as the President and Executive Director of the nonprofit conservancy Forest Park Forever since January of 2010, leading the organization through strategic growth in operations and fundraising. Highlights of Lesley's tenure include successfully negotiating a first-in-the-nation innovative public-private partnership agreement with the City of St. Louis and completing a $139 million fundraising campaign to build a new phase of major capital projects in the park and expand the endowment for long-term park care by $100 million. In addition to her Forest Park Forever role, Lesley is a member of the steering committee for the Brickline Greenway, previously known as the Shoto Greenway. Following Lesley's discussion on how and why Forest Park was formed in the late 19th century and Forest Park Forever's role in the dramatic restoration of the park and its role today, we will be joined by Meridith Perkins, Executive Director with Forest ReLeaf of Missouri. She will discuss the value of planting and stewarding trees as a way for people to take action to ensure the legacy of our natural environment lives on for future generations. Born and raised in the heart of downtown St. Louis, Meridith discovered nature along the urban banks of the Mississippi River and in neighborhood parks. She's now a passionate conservationist, forester, and arborist who has dedicated her 20-year career to connecting people to the benefits of trees. After working in state government and private urban forestry consulting across the country, Meridith now runs a nonprofit organization that aligns with her values and allows her to help her home community grow. So I will turn it over to Lesley, and then we'll hear from Meridith. Thank you, ladies.
All right. Thank you so much. I am excited to be here today and love having the opportunity to talk about Forest Park. Reading the last chapter of the book myself, it was great to kind of tie all together kind of the reasons why these spaces are put together in the first place, and to really be thankful for the foresight of people that came before us, knowing that there would be a need for these spaces. So as was mentioned in the book, Forest Park was founded in 1876, and at the time it was several miles outside of the city area. And if you think about the late 1800s in the city, it was very dirty. It was coal burning, and there was so much smog that doctors were actually prescribing a trip to Forest Park to get out of the smog and breathe the fresh air. So we're very thankful to the idea to create this oasis, which was out in the country at the time. Farms all around, but the park itself, it was heavily wooded. The majority of this space was forest and prairies. So it was created as a way to bring your carriage out to the park, stroll around, get lost in nature. And as you can see from this map, from the founding of the park, there was a lot of different roads and ways to really truly get lost in the park. And we laugh today that people continue to get lost in the park when they come, but the road system is definitely simpler than it was at the time. So if we think about the progression of the park, founded in 1876, The 1904 World's Fair was held in the park, and much of the forest that you see on this map was clear cut to make way for the fair, which would be kind of the left half of this map, and then it would continue on a little bit further to Big Bend in the city. So big, huge space for the fairgrounds. 1920s and 30s, Dwight Davis brought active recreation to the park, and this idea of no more passive strolling. We want people to get active, get in the grass, run around, play. So golf and tennis came to the park, and that was kind of the heyday of the park. After that, we saw decades of decline. The city, as many other cities around the country, didn't have the resources to take care of the park like it needed to as the infrastructure in major cities grew. So decades and decades of decline really took their toll on Forest Park. Our organization was founded in 1986 as just a scrappy grassroots fundraising organization, a friends group, people sitting around the kitchen table with great memories of the park saying, we hate that it's fallen apart, let's do something about it. So again, these people with these visions, future, just a really heroic undertaking ahead of them, partnered with the city over a 10-year period thinking about how are we going to rebuild this crumbling park. You can actually see behind me a picture of the, we'll go this way, the crumbling Grand Basin at the top, the picture on my wall, and then the Grand Basin that we see today. So a 2-year period was taken to create a master plan for the park. It included the community, and I think that's really important as we think about Forest Park today. The community banded together through Forest Park Forever and through this master plan process to figure out, how do we save this park? What should it look like? How do we want it to look and feel, and make sure that we have space for cultural institutions, places to get lost in nature, places for active recreation. And we actually have about 150 acres of nature reserves that ties this all together with a river that runs through the park. So I'm going to pop up a picture of the Forest Park Forever team at work in the park. Today we are a conservancy that is robust, 50 people, plus tons of volunteers that help us take care of this 1,300 acre space. Once the master plan was put in place, Forest Park Forever helped the city. We raised half of the $100 million that was spent to restore the big iconic spaces in the park. We changed our mission at that point from rebuilding the park to taking care of it forever. And we set about the $130 million campaign that was mentioned. We actually ended up raising $139 million. 100 went into the endowment. So those dollars will always be there. Again, we're here to take care of the park today and make sure that it's set up well for the future. Those dollars will always be there, and we'll use the investment income to help the city take care of not just the landscapes, but also that gritty infrastructure work that you don't really think of that much. So once the campaign was finished, a big piece of that was thinking about what are the next capital projects identified in the master plan that we want to take care of and bring to life. So a lot of road work, infrastructure work was part of that. We renovated Central Fields, the roads around the zoo, the Upper Muni parking lot. One of our last projects will be to transform the waterway on the east side of the park over by Steinberg, so that it can be an even better natural recreation area. But a project I'm going to focus on is the nature playscape. The idea of this was contemplated in the master plan. We wanted both places for kids to connect with nature and education opportunities. So working with the Forest Park Advisory Board, it's a 25-member board appointed by the mayor to represent all different interests that were around the table for that master plan. Working with them, we put those two ideas together, connecting with nature and kids' education, and created this 17-acre nature play space. Kids are not spending a lot of time outside. They are having problems with learning, with health and wellness, and getting them outside is so important. So this nature playscape is under construction right now. It will be open either later this year, possibly next spring, depending what's going on in the community. But our mission as an organization is to restore, maintain, and sustain Forest Park with our city partners for generations to come. So I just want to close with our vision that is to create spaces that will connect people with Forest Park and connect them with the community. This picture is an overview of that 17-acre nature playscape, and you can see how it sets in the middle of Forest Park. You can see the World's Fair Pavilion, that red roof. Post-Dispatch Lake is at the top of the screen. The successional forest, it's a 40-acre forest just on the right and the bottom of the screen. So this nature playscape is a great way to connect kids, especially in an urban environment, and their caregivers, kind of give them an introduction to nature in an urban parky kind of way. And then we've got a natural space right next door that will encourage additional exploration. So again, so thankful to the founders of Forest Park for having that vision so long ago that we really needed a park in the middle of the country because it's in the middle of the city today. It's so great that we had the people that came together to create the master plan, those that formed Forest Park Forever, and really thinking about our vision, part of our mission to sustain the park, not just ecologically, but also socially and financially, to make sure that the park is relevant for today, and especially in the conditions that we have today, and we're setting it up for success in the future. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Meridith.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much. I am super delighted to be here again. I am the executive director with Forest ReLeaf of Missouri. We are a tree growing, planting, and advocacy nonprofit that works here in St. Louis County, and really statewide to grow urban tree canopy. Just listening to you, Lesley, about Forest Park, a personal story of mine. I grew up here in the city, and Forest Park was one of my playgrounds and one of the places that made me feel the most at peace. And I can just see, as I go back and visit, the number of people that are filling that park and filling their spirit as they recreate there. It's a real gift to our community, and I think a really testament to what we're talking about here today, which is inspiring people to recognize nature as an essential element in their lives, and also recognize that the importance of nature contributing not only in the cities but also in our wildlands. So when we think about nature and what's going on in this particular chapter of the book, really hit the nail on the head. As we look at our riparian ecosystems, we know that we have been losing tree canopy in those areas for centuries. Really, forested land across Missouri we've been losing traction, and now the sad reality is we are seeing a lot of pavement and development butting right up against those critical watershed buffer strips that used to be lush forested landscapes. And one of the reasons why Forest ReLeaf is here is to really start combating that trend, to turn the tide, not only by getting more trees planted, but also creating a conservation ethic or a culture of conservation along our region, so that people can value trees standing more than trees removed for a parking lot or a strip mall or whatever else might be proposed in these habitats. The way that Forest ReLeaf does this is we house a nursery in Creve Coeur Park here in St. Louis County, and we grow 20,000 trees in this facility, and we grow those trees with the help of thousands of volunteers annually. Volunteers from all walks of life, from scouts to retirees come out to our nursery and help us rear these young trees so that we can then distribute them to partners across the region to grow tree canopy. There's one of our baby trees now, and that's our nursery manager, Eric Floro there. So we have applications available for community groups to put in and a request for these trees, and then we'll approve those. Most of our trees end up going to parks, street tree plantings. They're also in green spaces and other public rights of way. The picture that you're seeing here now is actually a project that we worked on with the Great Rivers Greenway and some of our local municipal partners. We can distribute trees and promote the value, but until people know that these programs exist and accept that those trees are valuable, we don't get a lot of traction. So we actually put up these different trees work signs during the pandemic when lots of people were out, maybe by default, enjoying our trails and our parks, to help people recognize that the value of trees goes beyond just the aesthetic, but that it is in fact something that's calming our nerves as maybe we get laid off from our job, or are centering our kids when they're sitting behind their desk on their computer screen for hours, e-learning. So what we've noticed, especially in the urban forestry arena, is that trees are giving back to us in more ways than we even necessarily can calculate. And what Forest ReLeaf is trying to do and wants to do throughout our mission of planting trees and enriching communities is really bring that awareness to the public so that people are understanding of what the trees and the natural green infrastructure is doing for their livelihood. Because unfortunately, if trees are removed from our landscape, many times people don't necessarily recognize that they're missing anything. And then that value added and those benefits, those social benefits of community green spaces, bringing people together and helping people have an active, vibrant, healthy lifestyle, we don't necessarily notice that. I want to go back actually to just our distribution and point out that, when we give away our trees from our nursery, we're giving those trees to a number of different partners across the state. And we had this past year in 2020, we distributed 30 bur oak trees to the Katy Trail to celebrate the 30th anniversary of that state park and the trail system there. And bur oak, as you know from the book, has a very special legacy along the Katy Trail and in the Missouri River bottoms. So we were grateful to be part of that story and to continue that legacy of the bur oak. And it also is a wonderful tree to spark imagination and excitement with kids. The bur oak acorn and the big beautiful stature of those trees is just something that inspires awe. And I think when we start talking about engagement, what we really want to look at is how we can inspire people to recognize that these spaces are important and worth saving. And I think what Lesley and her group are doing at Forest Park, again, creating a nature space playground, someplace where people, young people can identify with a natural landscape, but also feel comfortable and also feel like this is something that they want to preserve and protect. That message is going to move to other parts of preserving and protecting native natural areas. We work a lot with our youth in communities. And one of the things that we as an organization have realized is that it's one thing just to plant trees, but if we can actually give people the experience of touching that root ball and planting this tree in their neighborhood park, all of a sudden they have ownership and they have an appreciation for the landscape that encourages them to be a long-term steward. And as more and more long-term stewards are developed, we can see that slowly trickling down into all kinds of other benefits outside of just their own nursery or their own neighborhood. This is a picture from our tree camp this summer. We had a very small and socially distanced tree camp where we taught fifth and sixth graders all about Trees 101 and everything from tree biology to careers in arboriculture. And it's a wonderful way to see people, see these kids light up when they realize what happens, once this tree gets out of that little pot and gets planted in the ground. They get to touch the roots. We sent everyone home with the tree, and there were smiles all around. When I was thinking about participating in uh, this talk and really what 2040 would look like and what maybe mission accomplished for Forest ReLeaf would be if we could say, we want to grow tree canopy and we want to plant trees and we want to excite people around, their contribution to making this world a better place. I was really filled with hope in this time when so many things, we're losing trees for so many reasons, whether that's severe storms, whether it's invasive insects like the emerald ash borer or development or anything else. We recognize that these trees we're losing tree canopy. But when I connect with our partners, when we work with our youth and see the twinkle in their eye and the excitement when they take home those trees, it really does fill me with hope that we can have a greater, greener 2040 and beyond. And when we look into the future, and I think when you get into forestry, you have to play the long game. Trees take a long time to establish, and when you're planting those trees, the saying is always you plant a tree now for the best time was 20 years ago. And I think that's true. We're not planting for ourselves as we plant these trees. We're planting for a better future for the next generation. And I think as we think about what we can do right now, I encourage everyone here. I know there's probably lots of families reading this book together with their kids and talking about, hey, what can we do? When things seem overwhelming, what can we do? And Forest ReLeaf wants to be a catalyst to help give people actionable opportunities to engage. So we invite everyone to come out to our nursery. We have volunteer opportunities to come and weed our pots and help nurture our trees all through the summer. This next spring, we will be hosting potting, seedling potting. So we'll be bringing, I think we've ordered 8,000 seedlings. And so we invite all of you to come and help plant those seedlings so that they'll be able to grow, and then we can distribute them to places like the Katy Trail, like Forest Park. We actually had a tree planting project planned for the nature play space in Forest Park with Forest ReLeaf trees this past spring that unfortunately had to be canceled. But get out there and volunteer, whether that's with us at our nursery or fill out an application. Our Forest ReLeaf application for community trees are available and open now on our website. So you can log in there and request free trees for your neighborhood or for your community. And we'll provide those trees and try and remove any barriers to a successful tree planting project for you and where you feel they're most important. And then I think maybe lastly, it's so important for us all to make the time and to take the time to get out and enjoy these beautiful spaces. Places like the Katy Trail, this is actually my daughter in Forest Park when we were picnicking just recently. If we can show people or show our people, our children, our families, and ourselves the value and we can experience nature wherever that might be, something changes within us. And I think that's what's going to impact 2040, 2060, and beyond. And that's really going to be what secures conservation as a legacy that's important to Missouri, and something that I think people will really recognize as a significant and unique place for us to be living here right now. So I really appreciate all of the work that the Burkhardts and everyone has done to put this book together. I love the mission and the story behind telling this history, because it's through this history that we're going to learn how to be better stewards into the future. With that, I'll turn.
Hello, everyone. I'm Lisa Carrico, Director of Family and Veteran Programs. Thank you, Lesley and Meridith, for the great presentation and connecting us to green spaces, our natural surroundings, and conservation efforts. Meridith, thank you for the message of hope. And Lesley, as a regular visitor to Forest Park, I'm super excited for the new playscape. Growing Up with the River does such a wonderful job of connecting families to the natural world of the Missouri River Valley. So in this week's activity, young naturalists will search for photo-ready subjects as they practice observation skills and learning how to document their findings. We'll include the activity in the comments below. With each chapter, we are hosting a little giveaway to folks who registered. Today, our winner will receive a gift package generously donated by Forest Park Forever. So thank you, Lesley. There's all kinds of goodies, a hat, water bottles, socks, coasters, you name it. Those are just a few. So it's not too late to register for this week's raffle. Visit mohumanities.org, Growing Up with the River. And next week, we'll email and announce our winner, and that could be you. Before we close, we would like to invite Dan and Connie Burkhardt onto the screen to send one last message out.
So when Lisa and Caitlin told us a few months ago that the Missouri Humanities Council was thinking of doing a series based on Growing Up with the River, we were thrilled. I mean, just really ecstatic about it for a couple of different reasons. I was very proud of the fact that then everything that Dan wrote, researched and wrote and put together for Growing Up with the River, and all of Brian's incredible illustrations and paintings would really become a part of the Missouri Humanities landscape forever. And the Humanities Council vision for how to interpret these chapters with gifted storytellers like Nartana, and in every other chapter, I mean, it's really brought everything that we conceived of to life. And when we wrote this book 4 years ago, you know, it was our dream that we could tell enough stories and tell them in innovative ways to encourage all of the families to come out and experience these things. Little did we know that this production of the Missouri Humanities Council would take place during the pandemic. So just think of that all of the boundaries that we had about education and family time and everything were completely altered this year. So that is an advantage to having this series right now. And where can we best experience the history and the culture of our state when so many other opportunities are close to us, is being out in the Missouri River Valley. So everything really came together so perfectly, and we thank the Missouri Humanities Council for their interpretation, finding all of these talented individuals and the most fun activities to support the stories in the book. Real quickly, when people ask us, I always say that my favorite chapter was the very first one in the book in 1806, when the boy planted his bur oak acorn. He sorted his acorns as a game by size, and then he planted it on the shore where Lewis and Clark came in from there on their way back to St. Louis. And all of you who've read the book know the rest of that story. So I love the first chapter, but Dan loves this last chapter that was covered today.
Yes.
So I'll turn it to him.
I do. This is my favorite chapter because it brings together all of the stories, the heritage, the hard work, the effort that people have put in to conserving these spaces for us. And our reader today, Nartana, read the chapter wonderfully and brought to our attention the effort that is taken to create these places. And most importantly, that the work that all of us can do to do small things for nature, whether it's planting trees or planting pollinators or just getting outside and experiencing it. So this chapter is full of ideas that we can all use to make the world better in the future. And to have Lesley and Meridith on the program today is just a great summary of microcosm of what the Humanities Council has done with this whole program. They have created a list, kind of an all-star team of people who live this, who actually spend their full time developing ways to make our world better. And that's what Forest Park Forever, and that's what Forest ReLeaf do. In early chapters of this book, we talked about German immigrants and what they brought to this country. One of the things they brought to it was a love of growing grapes and making wine. And they came from the part of Germany where grape growing was a very big deal. And when they saw the Missouri River Valley, it reminded them of what they left behind in Germany. And they wanted to plant grapes on those hills. And behind me is a painting that Brian Haynes did of our farm and our hills. When we saw those hills 25 years ago, we, like those German immigrants, decided we wanted grapes there. And we planted vineyards. And today, we're carrying on a long tradition of growing grapes and making wine in the Missouri River Valley. And like most winemakers, we like to use our wine to celebrate events and special occasions. And we've got a very special occasion coming up on October 17th. It's the annual gala for the Missouri Humanities Council. And this is a chance to celebrate everything the Missouri Humanities Council does to make Missouri proud of what we have. And this year, the Humanities Council is, like most organizations, doing this virtually. And that sometimes is a challenge, but this year they've got such a wonderful guest, one of the greatest novelists in America, Jane Smiley, is the special guest at the Humanities Council's event on October 17th. And when Connie and I found out about this a few months ago, we decided we wanted to donate wine from our vineyards and send it to everyone who signs up for this event, and let everyone share a glass of wine with a Pulitzer Prize winning author, Jane Smiley. So we hope that many of you out there have a chance to be a part of this program on October 17th. And those of you who are over 21 can share a glass of wine with Jane Smiley, and the rest of you can sit in and enjoy the program. So I want to end by thanking everyone at the Humanities Council for doing such a remarkable job, putting together terrific readers, wonderful experts like we had today, and bringing our book to life. Because the Humanities Council does things for small and large communities throughout Missouri, for families, for veterans organizations, and for all of us to connect our past to our future and make it a better one. So thanks for doing that.
Thank you so much, Dan and Connie, for all of your support. So much gratitude. So for everyone out there listening, don't miss our Momentum virtual gala on October 17th at 6:30 p.m. You can get your tickets at mohumanities.org on our gala page. On behalf of the Missouri Humanities, we would like to thank HEC TV for helping us present this program. A special thanks to all our featured storytellers, special guest speakers, and our partner programs, St. Louis Storytelling Festival, Magnificent Missouri, the Missouri History Museum for making this program possible. A very special thanks to artist Brian Haynes for allowing us to share his beautiful illustrations from the book, and to Dan and Connie Burkhardt for writing such a charming and imaginative book, and for entrusting us to share the stories within. Last but not least, thank you to all of our viewers. We hope that this series was a fun invitation to connect with our state's rich history and natural world, that it inspires you just as much as it did us to get out and experience our majestic river valley, our historical sites and green spaces, and to take action in protecting our rich resources for future generations to come. So thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening.